their items together. They go into the town, and circling overhead, they see bright colors of the feathers of these great beasts. And they meet their NPC, friends of the party, maybe a rich merchant or an industrialist or something, and invites them to their stables. But instead of on the ground level, they start heading up into the towers, and they realize that these aren't just normal stables. These are stables of great, massive winged beasts, griffins, right? And they come in all shapes and colors, some sleek and narrow and fast, others bold and powerful and monstrous. And maybe they come in bright tropical colors. One's griffins that lived on tropical islands, others have dun and brown and darker colored imagery and high elevated mountains. And maybe there's others that live near coastlines. And the player characters have their choice of which ones they're going to take, but for a price, because maybe the wealthy patron needs them to go on a mission to accomplish some kind of task. So today we're going to talk about the Day of Griffins, and it's a catch-all. So, guys, prep those minds, top off on that mind fuel, and we'll get started in just a moment. Well, hello, creatives community and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. Today is the Day of Griffins, and um, thank you for pointing this out in the chat, even though you probably didn't mean to do this. Um, how do you spell Griffin? Right? And this is going to actually be a little bit uh, of an aside as well as far as talking about this topic. Well, the main goal of today is just going to be talking about mounts, mounted combat, mounted adventures, what to do with mounts. Of course, this has to do with aerobatics. Sometimes we don't really get a chance to do that either in a lot of our fantasy RPGs and such. And um, the assumptions that goes along with this kind of industry, whether it is how do you pronounce something, how do you spell it, what's the best, and we can think about this when it comes to something very common like dog shows, right, or horses, or any kind of like breeding of animals, and how people fall into different categories and whether they like them or hate them. We have our society of cat people and dog people, and of course it's all subjective, right? But you kind of have fun with it, and to also deal with, we talked about this on the channel before, about dealing with giving your players a superior capability, but in reality that superior capability is pretty much nil when everybody else has the same thing. So if the players, if the Day of the Griffin on this particular day, and again, we're using this as a prompt to maybe temporarily change our dynamic with our players. Maybe the bad guys too have their own sortie, cadre, flock, group of flying animals, and they use them as mounts. And what happens when that comes about? And maybe you might even want to try. I don't know how to do this. There are ways to do it, and some people have different methods. But how do you do three-dimensional um, combat when you have theater of the mind and or using miniatures and things of that nature? So we'll try to hit all that, but I don't know how close we're going to get to it. Yeah, yeah. Griffins are a subject I never had much to say about, but griffins are okay. Yeah, is it Griffon, or does it end in in, or is it Gryph? I don't know. Maybe those are different breeds of griffins you have, and of course you can play with mechanically with griffins in the world, right? You give them extra if you're using classic fantasy. You give them extra hit points. You lower their hit points. You increase their dex. You change their armor class. You give them an extra attack or take away an attack or give them all kinds of personalities as well. Are they afraid of fire? Are they afraid of the dark? Are they do they go into a blood frenzy when they smell blood or something? Are they easy to control or not? Player characters might have animal handling, and you have to blow the dust off of the animal handling skill and attempt to use it in the game. And I hear sometimes people, we have a lot of our role playing games where there's like dump stats and dump abilities because, oh, we never use those. Well, maybe we don't use them because we don't give the opportunity to have those things used in the first place. And this might be an opportunity to do that as well. Uh, Now, Drew mentions that, like, personally, I don't like the idea of a stable full of them since I prefer them as a species that cannot really be domesticated, which I like. If you want a flying mount, get a Pegasus. Someone's got their opinions. So I guess we're going to have to fight over hippogriffs, right? Uh, but that aside, of course, this is your world, and I'm using the prompt on the day of Griffins as, and you could fill it with Pegasus. I don't care what you fill it with, but the idea would be that maybe there's a day where the rare tamers come into town, maybe, or it's a day. It's a special day in nature where the player characters may be able um, to gain the services of one, maybe in nature. It just so happens that this is a day where they're at their most passive, but by the end of the day, it's like you're going to have to dismount and let them go because they're probably going to turn on you or something like that. Or maybe it's one particular time. I always talk about this druid circle or whatever, and they need help, and with a special concoctions of herbs and spices or a medallion from a wizard or some kind of MacGuffin that allows them to obtain the services or the temporary alliance with these creatures and bareback riding them through the skies or something like that. um, Shice mentions that the cockatrice thing in Golden Axe was a very cooler mount, though. I remember Golden Axe. Yeah, flying monkeys. Yeah, and mind you, you can insert your favorite or least dangerous for your game type of mounts or something. Doesn't matter, pterodactyls or whatever. But I think it would be kind of cool to have to put in the players' hands, like um, they must care for them and protect them instead of using them as meat shields. Or if they decide to use them as meat shields, what are the drawbacks? What's the ramifications of doing that kind of thing? Um, are do they have to obtain the? Do they have to go through some kind of test or ritual or quest because there's a group of people who are experts at training them? We've seen this in Song of Ice and Fire, House of the Dragon, the Dune movies, where you have a class of people who are able to speak to mystical beasts and gain their trust, and that's the only way for the players to essentially even have the opportunity to ride these things, right? Maybe the players find baby versions of these griffins in a past adventure, and today is the day. It's not a holiday, it's a day where the trainers are like, hey guys, I just called you guys up. Today's the day you have to bond with them, and today's the only time to do it, right? It could be something like that, and this could be a reward for the players, or it might be the key to get to the next adventure. Hey, we need to go up into the floating mountains of Agathoth or something like that. And the only way to get there is to be on a mounted beast. And guess what, guys? You get to pick one, and it's going to be important. Do you want the bigger one that's more like that carry all your gear? Do you want the fast and quick one but is a little less endurable? Do you want the very maneuverable one but can suffer some kind of harm very easily or is easily distracted? So you can do these like give and takes. Also, because we might have our bad guys. Maybe we have a lot of flying bad guys. We have bad guys that have a lot of mobility and things of that nature. Splitting the party might become a dangerous thing. And also, you guys know I love the environment. So flying through narrow chasms and wind shear and thunderstorms and rain and hail and electrical arcs of lightning and updrafts and finding jet streams and floating on thermals and all that kind of stuff. You could have a lot of fun with this. And of course, you got to have the diving, maneuvering, fitting through chasms, caves, narrow passageways, rooftops, under bridges, overhangs, and that kind of thing. So, yes, am I verbal dumping? Yes. So let's get. The show isn't about me. It's also about our co-hosts. So let's see what you guys have to say. Um, yeah, Drew. The day of the Griffin is the day that flying Pokemon are extra strong. Why the hell not? Right? I mean, maybe you don't have to have the plucky music, but maybe these are what's the I'm thinking of the lion, griffin, gargoyle statues that align Gothic architecture. Maybe they come alive, or there's a wizard with figurines, and the PCs are like, "Well, we've been holding on to these things for a while, but we didn't really think they were magical." And then it's fine. Then finally, someone's like, "Oh, today is the day you get to use them," and the PCs have been holding on to them for a long time. And you're like, "Yeah, yeah." Yeah. Oh, yeah. Shice brings up in Within the Ring of Fire, they use some sort of unpronounceable lizard thingy. No horses. This could also be a thing in your world. Maybe there are no horses. I often like to bring up mounts like other than horses, like lizards, giant lizards, and turtles, and elephants, camels, water buffalo, bison, things like that. So yeah, mounted combat can be a little bit tricky in a lot of role playing games because uh, there you have to the game designers have to deal with balance and um, force manipulate force multipliers. So a player that has a mount and every other player that doesn't has a force multiplier. And then you also have the issue of we want to go from dungeon A to dungeon B, and we get mounts, but then when we go into the dungeon, we got to leave the mounts behind. And I've always made the argument that why do you have to go into a dungeon and leave your mount behind? Adventuring in the wilderness is dungeon crawling. It just doesn't have a roof on it, or it doesn't have a roof that we think of in the natural sense. So if you do 5-room dungeoning, that's easily wilderness travel, right? Go into the first air quotes room and the PCs fly over a river and there's a village. And then the second room is they flew a league or two and they're given hints to people that live in these world trees. And then the third room is volcanic area, right? The space between each air quotes room of the 5-room dungeon, if you want to make it that simple, could just be travel, flying and things like that. And of course, if the players have this extra mount, is the mount just flavor for them to get from A to B, or do you give them the do you hand over the stat block in totality, right? So that's up to you guys. Vince mentions yeah, like Shice Squad mentions, Hunt mentions, do you want the one that'll whip people with his tail and send them flying? The cockatrice thingy and golden axe? Hells yeah. You could also give the players like, oh, by the way, you get to pick one thing, and you could just give this as a reward trait, right? Your mount gives you one extra thing. So you get to pick it each round. So your mount gives you flying movement for one round. and you get to you're on the mountain. It flies from one area to another, and it lands, and you have to fight normally. Or you could say, instead of flying, you get to make one extra attack with your attack roll or whatever the Griffin's attack roll is, and it gets to do one claw swipe or one beak attack or something like that. I suppose the meat shield thing could be a problem because some players might look at it like, oh, well, hit points are just a resource, and it's got what 30 hit points. I'm going to use that as a meat shield for all the attacks. But you could have social ramifications for that, and of course, moving on in the adventure, maybe PCs need to share a mount because one of the mounts died or was charmed or something like that. But it could also be just background flavor. Hey, you get to fly to the next island, and the Griffins go off hunting, and you guys adventure, and then you get back on the Griffins again. But the purpose of this is just to say that, like, don't be afraid to give your characters mounts. Vince says in a Numenera campaign, we had a giant dragonflies as mounts. I love that idea of like dragonflies, beetles, flies, fireflies, wasps, bees, butterflies, and things. Moths, and the PCs get to fly on them. Or maybe they strap the dragonflies or butterflies on their back and use them as like backpacks. Weirdly enough, the GM basically gave them to us at first. They were already trained, which was weird. Later, we traveled into the past and had to tame and train them. So they are late trained, had to tame and train them then, so they are later. Oh, so it was like you went in the past to train them so that by the time you came to the future, that was how they became trained in the first place, and that's how you got them. I like that. I love that. Oh yes, the Ahsoka. Yes, exactly. Right. The latest episode of Ahsoka came out. I think it's the fifth or sixth episode. Anyway, the one where Thrawn shows up, and Drew says, "I really love the mount in the latest Ahsoka episode," and I love that too. Right. It's the mount was another NPC, right? It was another character. It had personality. It went and did its own thing. It revealed a, a vital bit of information for our one of our characters to engage in some social interaction. So mounts can be pretty fun as well when the mount doesn't really feel like flying today, or the mount's a little bit hungry, or the mount gets protective over a PC that gets down to 0 hit points, right? And just have some fun with it. And today is the day of, so the players may only have this for, I'm assuming, 24 hours, but a day doesn't mean anything. I mean, the first day of spring doesn't mean it's only for 24 hours. This could be a thing that happens in, hey, the PCs went up north in your world to the skyscraping mountains or whatever, and during that period of time up there, we say, hey, let's try out these rules. Hey guys, here's a great reward, but there's a there is an expiration date on this benefit. So just be aware that, and again, the benefit doesn't need to be pure benefit. Players may need to keep them tamed. They need to feed them and protect them, and to constantly use their skills to keep them under control. And heck, may even have to care for them when they want to go mate or travel or migrate or sleep, and those kind of things. Literally taking care of them with morale, keeping their spirits up, singing to them, grooming them, taking them, maybe periodically being forced to have to bring them back to trainers who care for them. And what a great gold piece sink in your fantasy realm. Hey, I don't care that you're flying a Griffin, but it's going to take at least 6 trainers, caretakers, let's say, to take care of them. That kind of stuff. So, or what are the players doing on their downtime? Training their Griffin. Yeah, member of the squad says, unlike dungeon crawling, adventuring in the wilderness is actually possible. Yeah, why not? Take advantage of it. There's it collectively, I think sometimes we think that wilderness travel and dungeoneering are like these completely separate things that we have to do differently. One requires hexes and the other requires, you know, light blue lines on graph paper. And no, they're basically the same thing. It's 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 a river, a mountain, a heavily dense forest, that volcano I mentioned before, a great lake, whatever. All these things are walls in your dungeon, and you just go from one area to the next. Vince says maybe the day of the griffin is the day all normal mounts grow wings. It ooh, or I love that idea because maybe griffins aren't a normal thing in your world except for today, and this is the day. I don't know. The great ritual from the Council of Seven Wizards turns uh, the flock of predatory birds into these animals, or maybe there's a strange ley line where felines and predatory birds collapse together, and this is where the owl bears and the griffins came from, or something. It could be a ritual that summons them, or a minor deity gifts so many to the people who have trained for 101 days to finally take to the skies, and the deity's avatar shows up with seven of these things in tow for the seven cadets that were given. Whatever, I don't know, you could come up with it. They don't need to be the natural aspect of your world at all. They could literally have been summoned by a wizard who says, guess what, they're going to last 24 hours. Oh no, I'm sorry, 23 hours and 58 minutes, you need to get going. And at the end of that time they disappear. Who knows? Drew says, oh no, don't mention flying between dungeons. People could get the idea to fly the one ring directly to Mount Doom. I always had a problem with that. I love myself some Lord of, I'm as nerdy as everybody else, right? But I had a problem with the Eagles because I'm like, they're not really your friends there, Gandalf, because they could have very easily picked up the ring, or at least one of you guys, and dropped it. It's like, nah, we'll show up just when we feel like it, just to make you guys cherish our help or something. And listen, beautiful scene, love the music and all that kind of bullshit, but it's like, really, really, yeah. I hear you guys talking about dungeons. Yeah, heathen, what's going on? We need our Odin for our group. Yep. I think all of us are feeling that the Disney Plus show, yeah, Ahsoka, is it absolutely genius because it doesn't totally suck? Yeah. But by the way, for everybody who's like, writers shouldn't get paid more because we have so many shows that sucked, let me challenge you on this fact. Maybe we need to pay them more, and we need more writers and give them just as much time as our actors do in prepping themselves physically. And the reason those shows sucked is because we didn't have enough writers and didn't pay them enough and stressed them out and didn't give them enough time. Just like visual effects artists, they don't get paid enough and they don't get enough time to finish out these requests. So it's the same thing. So yeah, for every show that sucks, maybe that's because they did suck because they weren't the writers. They didn't hire the right writers. They aren't educating new writers, and they didn't have enough time to do it. Yep. Mm-mm-mm. Yep. Now, Vince mentions he's having a different conversation here, but I want to bring this up. Says, well, true, but you can still explore ruins and stuff like that. Lost place exploration is actually a big thing nowadays. And I think um, it's making old school adventuring, dungeoneering, OSR style, I guess NSR now today or something is making a comeback. And it's fallen out of favor because back in the day, exploring was necessary because it saved your ass. But today, it's not as important, right? There's character creation is made in such a way that you don't really need magical artifacts. You don't really need to explore to find out the weaknesses of the monsters. Everything is balanced out, so there's no need to uncover information, but it's starting to make a comeback. And I'd like to say, like in this Day of the Griffins idea, it could be the players are at a disadvantage if they don't have these things. Like when we talk about game balance, um, there's a thing going around in the uh, intro blogger potosphere talking about player game balance happens because of players. So players decide all the encounters they want to engage in, all the battles, and they get to run. And it could be that you specifically set up your adventure like, guess what? You four players, oh no, you're going to get murder killed if you don't have mounts. Like this is the adventure. Like you need these things, and you could just range it up and just like, no, you're going to be, you're probably going to get, when you climb up the mountain, the skyscraping mountains, you're probably going to get knocked off and fall to your deaths, and there's going to be all kinds of flying things, and only the ranged characters are going to have any effect on it. But if you have mounts, you're going to equal the score. And then so I like that kind of thing where you say, you give to the players, there's a choice, and one of those choices is pretty dangerous, but it's up to you. Yes. Yeah, having a super intelligent mount would be fun, like the horse Maximus entangled. Yep. And we've brought this up before about players that can't make it all the time, and some players that want to jump into an adventure and jump out and such, and how we, air quotes, always have problems with this. But here's an idea. And I've done this before. Give a player a mount. Like, oh, hey, it's one of your best buddies who wants to play in a game, who's always value added, and you're like, I don't have a character for him. Yeah, you do. Here, play one of the Griffins, and that's your character. And let him do all the charades and all that kind of business. Yeah, flying them out. I hear you, Vince. Yeah, it says flying to Mount Doom would have had a lot of problems. They could actually be tempted by the ring, and they're also very obvious for the Nazgul. I know that. I pick, and I think I pick with a lot of other people. But yes, you are absolutely correct. They could have been. They could have had the action music with the eagles, like the first 5 minutes of the movie. Oh, it's almost done. Shh, eagles flying, and then a boom, like 1, 2, 3. They get shot out the sky, fall into the volcano. The ring happens to just fall on a cliffside somewhere, and all of us looking at the movie like, dude, oh damn, maybe that wasn't a good idea. Gandalf's like, oops, sorry guys, I thought it would be safe. Heathen says they could be robot griffins constructed by an artificer or artificer, and allowed to escape and do whatever. It could be. They could have been escaped. The Great Escape, where the players do a thing, and to escape from, instead of the adventure going into a dungeon and into danger, the adventure could be escaping away from danger. And this could have been the beginning of the end of another adventure. How many James Bond movies have we seen where it's in media res, right? James Bond is driving fast, skiing, hang gliding, running across rooftops. Maybe this begins with the players are like, pick a mount quick. Big one, small one, colorful one, the all black one, the one with gray and stripe, whatever. And they go, okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we'll pick this one. They all jump on one and they fly away. And that's the beginning of the adventure, is escaping. And they're escaping flying enemies and meteor swarms falling from the sky and explosions from the ground and collapsing towers that are miles high, and they're flying through cliff sides, and they're like, we've got to get from A to B. And the PCs are looking at each other like, why are we escaping? And the DM's like, don't worry about it, you just have to get out of there. And they're like, okay. Yeah. Ooh, all right, Odin. One-eyed heathen says, we can't talk about mounts without mentioning Sleipnir, the eight-legged horse. Sleipnir? Sleipnir? I don't remember. I don't know how to pronounce it, but Odin had an eight-legged mount, and mounted heroes are a very popular thing in literature and mythology, right? Drew brought up the Pegasus. Like, I don't have a thing with griffins, but Pegasus, you want to fly something, get a Pegasus, right? And so great heroes have had a Pegasus and ridden on the back of that. And these could be mythologically associated. Hey, you've achieved the seventh circle of something. You are now granted the ability to fly from here to this other place and maybe have some adventures, roll some dice, and when you get there, you get off and say goodbye to the Griffins, and maybe the Griffins come back one time. Or maybe they're just a MacGuffin as well. Hey, you guys have to travel to a distant land to do a thing. You've got call whistle or something. And to get from A to B, you call a whistle, you get on a mount, you fly there, you get off, and then to get back home, how are you going to get back home? Blow the whistle, use the cipher, use it's a one-time escape-free kind of thing, and get back. Yep. Yeah, Vince says honestly, current shows are much better than they used to be. Standard has risen. I also think there's a lot of opportunity for writers, maybe, and creators, developers that haven't had the opportunity now with streaming. So it's kind of that back and forth. It's like there's terrible stuff, and then there's like people rising to the top where they're able to do a thing that isn't as it's not as risky for the studios, because if they got a streaming service, it's just one of a thousand things. And then someone takes the opportunity to go, I'm gonna write what I want to write, you know. Yep. I hear you. Yeah, making a comparison like why are we making Ahsoka a masterpiece? They're like, nah, it's not really a masterpiece. It's just that it's like having it's like eating really terrible food and then you go get an average hamburger and you're like, oh, this is so good. And that's just because you've been eating horrible stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Because member of the Shy Squad says, hey, I like Ahsoka just fine. It's just it stands up well next to its latter day Star Wars series counterparts. It must be a masterpiece. And yeah, it's just so much better than Boba Fett, right? Boba Fett that show didn't even have a purpose. And what I mean by that is our protagonists didn't let us know what their purpose was. And it confused the hell out of me. And some people had a problem because Tomoa Morrison is, he's gained some weight, he's gotten older. And I was like, the aging gunfighter is awesome. I like that idea, right? I like the idea of like it. They should have encouraged, enhanced the amount of shape and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. That's just me. I would have played into it. And it's anyway. Griffins are highly intelligent, right? So how in the hell are they going to let you ride them? Yeah, that's where you're going to have. Well, the excuse could be it's the day of the Griffin, right? That's one easy out. But the other thing is maybe they're not easy to tame and they don't really want to be ridden. And the players they've been captured and air quotes domesticated by abuse and fear by the enemy, and the players are trying to release them, which is also a great mission objective, right? Hey, climb up the skyscraper mountains, free the enslaved griffins, or they come upon them and they're like, oh man, these people have been like treating them pretty bad. And so they need them to escape, but the griffins don't trust anybody. And the players need to do a thing to to get their attention and to say, hey, trust us, at least temporarily, by healing them or feeding them or defeating the enemy, punching punching the enslavers in the throat. And the griffins are like, okay, all right, okay, we down. I see you. I see you. It could be something like that. Like, you know what? I was thinking about eating you, but yo, we down, right? At least for right now, we on the same side. And like, yeah, and they just dap it out with the with the griffins. Although the griffins could be like, you're not getting on our back. I'll grab you by the waist or the shoulders and grab you and take you around, but you're not getting on my back, which would be pretty hilarious as the PCs are dangling, over the skyscraper mountains, like, please don't drop me, please don't drop me. Vince says, I already told that I'm writing on a game or campaign where secrets are super important. So knowing weaknesses is huge. Some enemies are only beatable by learning about them. And I old OSR, old school gaming, some new players don't understand, well, if combat was so lethal, how did you defeat your enemies? And it was because you learned secrets, you learned weaknesses, you learned behaviors. And we as storytellers, flame tenders, narrators, dungeon masters, game masters, we role played those monsters. We role played the fact that we didn't need to know what the players were going to do. All we needed to know was how our world will react to any given situation. So, does the ogre does the ogre just want to get drunk and eat meat? Well, maybe that's why they're attacking the dwarven hold to steal their cows, blind cave cows, and their barrels of ale, right? And when the players go, oh well, we can easily stop this fight. Just let's make a deal with the dwarves. They give you a bit of their ale, maybe not the best taste and stuff, but whatever, and give you two blind cattle each season or something. And the ogre's like, oh well, sure, because the ogre never thought about, right. It's learning those kind of things. And I wish in modern gaming, especially when it comes to like monsters and some hints for dungeon masters and game masters and such, that like just put 1 to 3 lines below each monster, some kind of thing that if the players learn what's happening, they can absolve the situation or navigate it or find out the weakness or whatever. Vampires are one of my favorite because they basically are encompass everything I love about monster hunting, which is for every benefit a vampire has, they've got a weakness that goes along with it. Sunlight, fire, holy symbols, garlic, running water, being invited, mirrors, and silver. You could go on and on and on, and people pick and choose which ones. Uncontrolled rage, obsession, etc., etc. Right? A bloodlust, and so what happens? They also have cool abilities: mind control, and illusions, and shape changing, and controlling darkness, and turning into mist, and controlling animals, and blood sucking, and being physically imposing and superior to most mortals, etc., and using those weaknesses. And so today, segueing back to the Day of the Griffins, it's possible that the players, how do I say this? Maybe they need to capitalize on the natural behavior of the Griffins to solve a problem that they normally wouldn't be able to solve. So in the latest episode of Ahsoka, we have our character Sabine riding on a mount, and she goes, "You know what? I think you know something better than I do. So I think you sense something. Go ahead and go there and ride, ride, ride. I'm not going to control the mount. Mount goes off. Oh, you were just thirsty. And then come to find out, well, it wasn't just thirst. Well, it was, but it also opened up a different path. And so maybe the players have to do this balance of, you know what, and the balance could be, for a short time, we as players have control of the Griffins, and then we have to relinquish that control back to the storyteller. And the storyteller says, "Fine, now you get control back," and that kind of thing. So maybe the Griffins' behavior, despite the fact that the players don't have control over it, leads them to do a thing. So the players might be like, "Hey, we need to fly away from the evil Five Kings mountain, scraping the skies," but the Griffins want to curve back, and it's like, well, why are they going back? And one PC is like, "Ooh, there's a nest up there, and there's younglings and eggs, and I don't know what small Griffin chicks would be. A flock pride or something, whatever the case might be, right?" So they fly back, and the PCs are like, "No wonder we keep circling back to the same place, even though we could easily end the adventure by flying away. It's because we have to get them. Well, how do we get them down?" And the PCs have to wrap them up in blankets and be careful. And then we're about to get into a fight with the pterodactyls, the pterodactons or something, pterodactyl riders, and they're just they're flying. Like the riders in Avatar, like they're not even seated; they're just like hooked on with their feet and kind of like standing up on their backs, throwing javelins. And the PCs are like, "We don't need to be in a fight because these eggs might crack." Or, "Hey, PC, let's split the party. You lead the small flock away towards the east, and we're going to ascend and try to towards the sun and have the sun at our backs to blind our enemies," or something, so on and so forth. So yeah, I love secrets. I love learning a thing to solve a problem as well. Also, on the Day of the Griffin, the if we get away from the more arcane bird/lion kind of thing, it's also used in heraldry. And this day could just simply be a day where the players must give one because of a coronation or a wedding or a festival. It could be the release of one that was injured prior because of a past adventure, or it was a javelin went through its flank and it was taken care of, but now it's going to be returned back to the wild. But the players and the community is like, you know what? These people attacked the Griffins and we need to, we kind of want revenge on them. And the PCs are like, well, maybe it was a mistake. We don't know. And so maybe they follow the Griffin back to the hovel of the gnolls that, threw the javelin in the first place, not realizing something. We also know about mounted knights and griffins is a very common thing as well. And there could be some kind of conflict there. Hey, only mounted knight, only the Knights of the Silver Flame. And I know that's from something, but it doesn't matter. The Knights of the Silver Flame are the only ones that can ride griffins. You shouldn't be on them. And the PCs are like, you can't tell me what to do because I'm a player character. You back the hell up, right? And so they could be in conflict with a goodly people who just have a little bit arrogant and have attitudes. But there could be that thing. It could be that only a nobility can ride them, but come to find out that there's a lot of commoners that can psychically bond with them, and they are more naturally attuned to them as well. I don't like this background. This background is too dark. Let's get something like this. So, also, I brought up at the beginning of this broadcast about different types, and yes, first of all, we can reflavor, redistribute, reuse, recontextualize any and every monster. We have infinite monsters if we just arrange them to be in specific environments. So, as was mentioned previously, maybe this is the day where they get wings, where mounts get wings. So, the greatest horses become Pegasus on this day. Sure, why the hell not? Maybe depending on the region they're from, tropical regions have tropical uh, colored and styled griffins, whereas the deep winter has the uh, thick fur and feathers of those in the winter, whereas coastal region ones may look different. And of course, we can take from any kind of feline, panthers, pumas, tigers, cheetahs, leopards, etc., for their flanks. And then we could take any of their forward looking bodies from any kind of predatory birds or any kind of other birds, from parakeets to falcons and hawks and eagles and peregrines and ospreys. I ran out of predatory birds, but you get the point. There's other birds too, like uh, I don't know, seagulls and swans and ducks and those kind of I don't know, woody woodpeckers, little woodpecker things. I don't know. Anyway, you get the point. So doing that to reflavor them in your world could also be a thing. And along with that, when it comes to breeding them, if in your world, I hear you, Drew. Juden Fuzz is doesn't particularly like having the idea of stables of griffins. True, but in a world where there are people who are skilled, or this is a common thing in a section of your world that you want to develop, where they breed arcane and crazy and mythological animals in a certain way. Their size, their shape, like breeding dogs and cats and other kinds of animals, fish, and that kind of thing. Maybe there are griffins who are specifically coastal griffins that can dive into the water and they kind of swim a little bit to grab prey and fly back out, where there are others that are really built for the winter, and their wings and their fur is so thick and heavy that they can wrap their themselves around maybe a trainer or a bonded pair and save them in the wintertime, that kind of thing. I hope the chat is still good, because I still see people here. Okay. There's also the idea that they are maybe breeding, domesticating them makes them weaker than the ones in the wild. So the stat blocks for the ones in the wild are literally whatever's in the book. Like there's no unless you're using magic to temporarily control them. There's just no way you're controlling these powerful beasts, these griffins. But the domesticated ones, less armor class, less hit points, maybe zero attacks, or maybe just one attack the player has, and of course, mechanically speaking, we can start to look at the mounted combat rules. If they are a little bit too complicated for your group, just truncate them down and just go, okay, here's what's going to happen. You can use you get one extra attack, and we're going to say it's from the mount. And if you are attacked, you can decide or roll a die, right? Roll a d6 on a 1 and 2. It hits the mount. 4, 5. Um, 3 through 6, it goes after you, or you can flip a coin, or you can say you can divide damage between you and your mount. Understand that if your mount is taken to half half its hit points or less, or damage or whatever, come up with some kind of statistic. Like every time your mount gets hit, you have to roll a d6, and if you roll over it, the mount is under your control. If you roll under it, it loses control, and you keep adding one. It got hit one time. All right, if you roll a 1, it goes out of your control. Oh, it got hit 3 times. If you roll a 1, 2, or 3, it goes wild. That kind of thing. You could do that kind of timer-ish of it. There's impending doom if a PC wants to use their Griffin as a meat shield or something. You could also unlock certain abilities. So tier 1 in our D20 games, at tier 1, it's all it is it's just flavor. It's just it's background element to get from one place to another. But by tier 2, which is like 5th to 10th level, okay, now we've unlocked some of its combat abilities, but the dungeon master still controls them. Maybe by tier 3, no, it's one of here's the stat block, you do whatever you want. By tier 4, it's maybe it has more enchantments. It's maximized on its hit points or something. You could also do that by opening up its capabilities, like you would do with, say, a player character that has an ancient sword from their family. First level, no, it's not really magical. It's special, but it's not magical. But by 7th level, it's a +2 sword, and by 15th level, it's got like 5 extra abilities that you've added onto it. And a mount could also be kind of the same thing. Also, if you really wanted to throw a monkey wrench into the system, maybe each player's mount is controlled by another player who gives it its personality. So the player to the left gives its personality, and then the player to the right rolls all the dice for it, or something like that. So that is not quite under the player's control, but it's under the control of somebody else. And lastly, like I said, someone who's not able to be at the game all the time, maybe they can play one of the mounts, or they play a collection of them. Hey, there's 4 mounts. Can I just play them and just kind of control them and kind of role play them a little bit and have some fun? And maybe there's other people at the table like, sure, have some fun with it. And, maybe come up with some descriptors to kind of change, making them very individual, kind of like the thumbnail I have. Like, let's see, you see some classic browns and goldens and whites, like an eagle, but there's some blue in here, and there in the foreground there's like a black and white one, or eagle head or something like that, predatory head. So yeah, talking about the Day of series, and talking about this Day of the Griffin, this could also not only may this be like a festival or a day on a calendar, like a farmer's almanac, but this day could also be a day that people are desiring. Like, no one has been able to bring about the Day of the Griffin, and it's up to the player characters to bring them back into the world, or for a deific entity to finally bring the Griffins here, because on the Day of the Griffin, they don't exist. And today's the day. It's been 3 generations, and we miss them, and we wish they took to the skies, but we haven't seen one. They've been hunted out of existence, or the deific entities had a battle and used them in their great battle with the Knights of the Silver Flame, but they no longer are here. And the Knights so much wish them back. That's why they ride horses with embroidered wings on the side of the barding that they wear. But one day they will take to the sky yet again. So yeah, absolutely. This could very well be a time when it's the goal of the adventure is to bring back a far more, shall we say, unnatural order. Talk Going to that druidic circle. Maybe some players are like, well, druids wouldn't really like griffins because they're like a permutation of nature. But maybe there's a wild magic zone in part of your world, and the druids that live there love these amalgam beasts. And griffins, owlbears, um, chimera, and so on. Maybe they're just a natural part of this wild magic zone, and the wild magic styled druidic circle, which could be made of air quote sorcerers and wild magic and stuff, are like, no, they just because they were made by accident, they breed true, and we want to protect them and bring them back here. Players may need to protect them while they migrate. That would be pretty interesting. Or in order to get from uh, the far south to the far north, the players must ride them um, on their while they migrate up north. Now, how to get back home? Who knows? But although they could stay up in north until they migrate back down south for breeding or territory or something of that nature. So on this day of, it's like, you know what, this is the only day we can travel that fast and that far, and this is what we're going to have to do to climb to the highest skyscraping mountain, wait for them to fly by, and we're just going to have to jump off and jump on their backs. Maybe not the smartest thing in the world, but they could do that as well. So guys, thank you so much for being part of this episode of the Day of Griffins. By the way, I picked this spelling, even though when I looked up Griffins, there's many different spellings. It's all semantics anyway, right? But for your purposes and in your games, the Day of and this Day of series, let's hope that you get a lot out of it. Tomorrow is a I'm going to use this as an excuse for a special day. It's going to primarily be a little bit masturbatory, not physically, in the sense of um, tomorrow is going to be Mercury Lost, and I'm going to describe my post-human transhumanist setting world. I've never really done that on this channel, and I have gotten away from Future Fridays, and so I just want. So tomorrow, if you don't want to tune in, that's good. But I thought I would just give a little bit of insight and share with you things that I've been my brain has always been working like the rest of you in when it comes to world building, working on these things for a long time, and always fine tuning every artist. No artist is ever done or finished a project. It's just when this project's taken away from them. And as being one of the part of the Cool Name Goes Here Kickstarter and development team, I'm hoping when the Kickstarter is finished and given out, and the sci-fi portion of it is done, that this will be the world, so the two will meet together. So, by the way, if you don't know, check out Cool Name Goes Here. I think they're up to the YouTube channel Mechanical Muse is up to the number 26 or 27 in its development, and it's actually pretty cool. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. I will see you tomorrow. We're going to talk a bit about sci-fi. We're going to start on I love our solar system, and we're going to talk about the Helios system, Solara, and Mercury. We're going to start there and kind of move our way out, probably on Fridays. So and it's kind of my way of like sharing a little bit of my design framework, and maybe you guys might want to steal some of that as well. So anyway, guys, have a great one. I'll see thee later. Thank you for spending your valuable time with me. But if you like this kind of thing, please like, share, subscribe, notify others, notify yourself, share with others, spread the word if this is the kind of thing you like. So anyway, guys, have a great one. I'll see you later.